You have a Microsoft Intune license. You have opened the admin center and now you're wondering, what exactly should you configure first? Should you create users, assign licenses, configure groups, or start enrolling devices immediately? Making one wrong decision during the initial setup can lead to enrollment failures, incorrect permissions, licensing problems, and a lot of troubleshooting later. In today's video, I will show you the essential configurations you should complete before managing your first device with Microsoft Intune. Make sure you stay until the end because I will also give you a simple Intune tenant readiness checklist that you can use in your own environment. Let's get started. Hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel Cloud Tech Services. I am Garima, and on this channel, we simplify Microsoft Intune, endpoint management, Microsoft 365, and modern workplace technologies through practical step-by-step videos. If you are new to this channel and haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notifications, and you will find more Intune tutorials in this series from beginner concepts to real world administration. Before we begin configuring settings, let's understand what an Intune tenant actually is. The Intune tenant is your organization's dedicated Microsoft Cloud environment. It contains the users, devices, applications, licenses, security groups, policies, roles, and administrative settings that belong to your organization. Setting up an Intune tenant means preparing this environment so that devices can be enrolled, administrators can perform the correct tasks, users can receive applications and policies, and company resources remain protected. Think of it like preparing a new office. Before employees arrive, you need to create access cards, define responsibilities, organize teams, establish security rules, and decide who can enter each area. Intune tenant configuration works in a similar way. For this video, we will see what Intune setup actually means, why the MDM authority is important, what tenant configurations are required to start with Intune, what steps are required to be completed before managing the users and the devices, and then we will look into the checklist for preparing a new Intune tenant. The first important concept is the Mobile Device Management Authority, commonly called as the MDM Authority. MDM Authority identifies the service responsible for managing your organization's devices. Without the correct MDM authority, device enrollment and management will not work as expected. Depending on your organization's environment, the configuration may involve Microsoft Intune as a standalone management service, Intune with Configuration Manager co-management, basic mobility and security for Microsoft 365, or a coexistence scenario. For most new Intune tenants, the MDM authority is automatically set to Microsoft Intune. However, you should still verify before beginning a large device rollout, especially when you're working with an older tenant or an environment that previously used another management solution. You must also confirm that your organization has the required Intune licenses. Many a times, a tenant may exist, but users generally need the appropriate licenses before they can enroll devices or receive Intune policies. Let's now see how to check the MDM authority and the Intune licenses. To check the MDM authority, we first need to open the Microsoft Intune portal. I already have this opened. We need to go into tenant administration, click on tenant status, go to tenant details. Under the MDM authority, it should be listed as Microsoft Intune. This confirms right here that The MDM authority for my tenant is set to Intune. The second configuration that we need to check is that the tenant has Intune licenses. To check that, we need to open the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Under Billing, go to Licenses and check the available licenses that are present. Since here I have Microsoft 365 E5 developer license, it comes included with Intune licenses. So I do not need a separate Intune suite license right here. The next step is adding your organization's custom domain. By default, Microsoft provides an address ending in onmicrosoft.com. Technically, you can use that domain, but most organizations prefer accounts that use their own company name. Adding and verifying the custom domain makes user identities more professional and consistent across Microsoft 365 services. Verification normally requires adding a DNS record through your domain hosting provider. Before creating hundreds of user accounts, verify the custom domain and decide which domain should be used as the primary sign in address. This small step can prevent a major identity cleanup project later. But remember, this is an optional step. If you are just exploring Intune in your lab environment, you may not add a custom domain if needed. Once the domain is ready, the tenant is ready, all you need to do is to prepare your users. Users can directly be created in Microsoft Entra ID, or they can be imported in bulk or synchronized from an on premises Active Directory environment or provisioned through an automated identity management process. Each user who needs Intune services should have a valid sign in account, an appropriate license, membership in the correct groups, and only the permissions required for their role. Avoid assigning administrative permissions to normal user accounts. For administrators, it is also a good practice to use separate administrative accounts and protect them with multi factor authentication. In my tenant, there are cloud users already created, but let's create a new one for this testing scenario. To create a new cloud only user, we need to log into Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Click on Users, go to Active Users. As you can see right here, I have multiple users created. These were default users that came in with this test subscription that I have. This is a Microsoft 365 developer subscription, a sandbox. To create a user, we can, if we are creating a single user, we can directly click on add a user and create it. So I'll go and click add user and I'll click create a user right here. We need to put in the first and last names. We need to mention what the username would be. And if there was a custom domain present, it would have given me an option to change the domain, but since I do not have any custom domain added in my lab environment, I am not getting that option. If you have it added, you might be able to select between both the domains, either the on Microsoft or the custom domain. It also allows me to automatically create a password. I will not do that right now. Since it's a test environment, I'll just keep the password known so that we can use this user for later. And the user, I have unchecked that they need to change the password on their first sign in, so that's not required. The second most important thing is to select what kind of license I need to assign my user. Since we are going to test the Intune configuration and device enrollment using this user, I will assign the user Microsoft 365 E5 developer license. This license by default has the Microsoft Intune included in it, the plan one. So we can use this license for enrollment and all other deployment purposes. If wanted, we can change the location of the user. I'll set it to India. You can also see what applications the user will get access to when they are assigned the Microsoft 365 E5 developer license. These are all the applications that the user will have access to. They'll have access to the Exchange environment, and they will also have access to the Intune plan, along with the endpoint privilege management, application management, all of that. So we do not need to procure or purchase a different Intune plan specifically for enrollment or management perspective. The E5 plan already includes all those applications. Once we are satisfied with all this, I'll click on next. This is going to be a standard user, a normal user. No administrative privileges would be provided to the specific user. So we are not going to assign any administrative rights here. On the profile info, I will just mention, I'll select the country here. I'll set it to India. Where is it? Yes. And that's it. That's most probably it. And then we'll click on next. Everything looks good as of now. The user Rani Chatterjee is ready for us. And we'll go and we'll click on finish adding. And just a matter of few seconds and the user is now created. So if required, the cloud users can be created like this, or there is an option to create multiple users. That can also be selected, add multiple users. Or if the users are going to be synced users, the users need to be created into Active Directory, which would then be synced onto the admin center, and that's it. Now that we have our normal user created, we also need to have users with specific administrative roles who can perform the application management, the Intune deployments, and other things. But before doing that, we should always remember not every administrator needs complete control over the tenant. Right now, if you see the account which I am logged in with, that's my account. If I go ahead and check the admin rights of my account, I have the global administrator roles. This is the highest privilege role that can be made available to any user in the M365 tenant. This is the highest role. But as per Microsoft, Microsoft always mentions that the administrators should work on least privilege. One person may only need to manage applications, the other person may handle device compliance. There can be a help desk technician who might only need to view a device or perform a remote action. So, using built in roles, using built in Intune roles and Microsoft Entra roles wherever possible, and following the principle of the least privilege is what Microsoft recommends. This means giving people only the permissions they need to perform their jobs and nothing more. So, as a best practice, you should avoid making every IT team member a global administrator. Global administrator has full privilege. It has the highest privilege. So sometimes it may appear convenient, or it may initially appear convenient, especially to my beginner students or my listeners who are just starting to work with Microsoft Intune and Entra and other things. It might look convenient, it might look easy, to assign everybody the global admin, because then you have free pass to whatever you are doing on the tenant. But on a production environment, it is going to create unnecessary security risks, and it will make administrative activities more difficult to control. Therefore, always remember, Microsoft suggests work on the principle of least privilege. Assign the role to a person according to the work or the task that they are supposed to do. If somebody has to perform Intune related activities, they should have Intune administrator roles and not global administrator roles. If somebody just needs a read access on the tenant, the global reader permission would be enough. They do not need a more higher privilege role on the tenant. Next is to assign the required license. When we created our user, Rani, we already, as you guys saw, we already assigned them the license that was available with us, which was the E5 license. A common beginner mistake is creating a user and then immediately attempting device enrollment without checking whether the user has an Intune enabled license. For us, in our case, with Microsoft 365 E5, this user already has the Intune enabled license assigned. So using this user, if we want to go ahead and attempt for device enrollment, we can do it. Obviously, there are a few changes that are required to be made in the tenant that we look further. But yes, from the license perspective, the user is good. Licenses can directly be assigned to individual users, like we did here. But in production, the most common way to manage licenses or to assign licenses is through a group based licensing. Now, what is a group based licensing? Basically, if you want to understand it, it's a simple security group that is created in Microsoft 365 and the licenses are assigned to the group. Instead of assigning the license to individual user, the licenses are assigned to the group and automatically the group members inherit the license. So, in larger organizations or in most of the IT companies where you work or where you would be working, group based licensing are being used. That's the most common and the most efficient way to manage licensing. There are groups created. The groups can either be static groups or they can be dynamic groups. What are these? We will look in just a second. But groups are created essentially, and the licenses are assigned to the groups. And when the members get added to those groups, the members inherit the license from the group membership. That is the most easiest way to go about with assigning licenses to users because this reduces the admin overload, the admin workload in large organizations. So before enrollment, you should also test the complete process. So before basically before performing enrollment in the production for large number of devices, it is always preferred, it is always suggested that you complete the test on a small number of pilot users or a small number of test users. And depending on the behavior of the test user, if the test users do not face any issues or they do not face any problems and everything is good to go, then you should go ahead and perform the bulk enrollment or the deployment for the entire production environment. Performing the test of the complete enrollment process on small number of pilot users help confirm that licensing, enrollment restrictions, policies, and applications are working correctly before the organization wide rollout is made. Otherwise, if there is some issues, the troubleshooting for let's say 1000 devices are there in your organization, if you do not perform a pilot testing, then troubleshooting on those 1000 devices, performing rollback actions, cleanup actions, that take a lot of time. So that is not suggested. Now, since we talked about groups and license assignment using groups, let's also see what groups are. So on the M365 Admin Center, if you see, there is an option called as active teams and groups. This is an integrated place on the M365 Admin Center where you will find Teams groups, that is Teams, Microsoft Teams channels or groups that are created in Microsoft Teams. You will find distribution lists. These come in from Exchange, where a list is created and users are added to the list, and then if you send the email to that list, the members who are part of the list receive the emails. So that is distribution list. And then you have security groups. Security groups or In general, groups are one of the most important building blocks in Intune because we would be using groups to assign applications. We would be using groups to assign configuration profiles, compliance policies, scripts, licenses, and many other settings. All the assignments that are done in Intune, they are not done on individual users, but they are done on groups. Your environment may contain security groups. These are the most commonly used groups for access control and Intune resource assignment. So, whatever task, whatever assignments of profiles and policies and other things, settings we'll do, we would do on the security groups. We'll create groups and we'll do it on the security groups. The second is the Microsoft 365 groups or the Teams groups. These support collaboration through resources such as shared mailboxes, calendars, or Teams, as we discussed earlier. And then we have the distribution list, like we talked about earlier, which is mainly intended for group email communication. As far as Intune is concerned, as far as Intune assignments are concerned, security groups are the most commonly used groups that we would be looking into in Intune. So now let's create a security group and let's see what kind of uh, functions we get when we create a security group. So this is something what we are creating as for Intune, uh, let's say license assignment, because we talked about that licenses can be assigned using groups, so we can look into how we can do that. So we it's just a random name, Intune license assignment, that's the name of the group. If you want, you can give a description: assign license to users using this group. Click on next. Now there's also an option if you want to assign Azure AD roles, you can also do that. We are not going to assign Entra roles or Azure AD roles, so we will not check this box. Go ahead and click on create a group. Once the group is created, now you just click on the group right here. It will open up and you can go ahead and assign members to this group. So we'll add a few members right here. So let's say I add these 3, 4 members. Okay. So we can go ahead and we can add these members. It will take a few seconds and the members are added. And then we can also go ahead and assign any licenses. So if I go ahead and assign this license, any member who is part of this group will automatically inherit the Microsoft 365 E5 license. We are not going to do that right now because the members that I added already have the license assigned to them. But yes, this is the way the license assignment is done using groups. I hope that's clear to you guys. But when we created groups and we added the group, there the members, I added the members manually. So there are two types of security groups. When we talk about groups, there are two types of groups that we talk about. The one is a static group, and then we have the dynamic group. So static group is something which needs management by the admins even after the group is created, for adding members and for removing members. So right now, the group that I created right here, it's a static group because the members need to be manually added to this group. Automatic group assignment, member assignment to the group is not going to happen. There are no queries to do that. So it's a static group that's being created. In a static group, an administrator manually adds or removes members. The static groups are simple and are useful for pilot deployments, temporary testing, and tightly control assignments. So, because this is a licensing scenario, we have limited number of licenses. It can be possible that there are specific users who are required to have this license. So, in such scenarios, static groups are helpful. We can use static groups for such scenarios. But dynamic groups are also an option. Dynamic groups automatically calculate membership according to the rules that are set. So let's suppose you're working in an organization. The organization has, let's say, 10,000 employees. And the basic requirement is that whenever an employee is onboarded to the organization, the employee must be assigned an E3 license. That's the basic requirement. So, in such a scenario, there has to be a dynamic group where the rules are set that any new employee that is recognized by the system gets added to that group so that the E3 license is directly assigned to that employee. And if any employee account has been disabled, it automatically gets removed from the group so that the license is automatically freed up. So that is one example, a real life example that is used mostly in large organizations where multiple user management, multiple license management is required. There can also be an example for creating a dynamic group where a dynamic device group can be created to manage all Windows devices, all corporate owned devices, devices from specific departments, or devices using specific operating systems. So, the dynamic groups that are created, the groups can not only have users assigned to it, but there can also be device groups or devices assigned to the groups. And the groups can be segregated or divided based on the type of operating system that's assigned, the if the device belongs to a specific device category or a particular department in the organization, or the ownership of the device, whether it's personally owned or corporate owned, or if it's Android device, Mac device, Windows device, all sort of combinations can be put in when we are configuring security groups with regards to devices, and the rules can be changed or can be modified based on the requirement. Dynamic groups are generally used because these can significantly reduce the manual work, but the membership rules must be designed very carefully. Because if the membership rules are not correct, the devices won't get added to the dynamic groups. A poorly designed dynamic rule could assign an application or policy to thousands of unintended users or devices. So the dynamic rule also needs to be correct because it needs to add the devices that should be added, and it should be able to exclude the devices where the deployment is not intended to be done. So the dynamic rule should be designed as such that any application that is being deployed or any policy that is being deployed is getting deployed to the intended users and devices, which means the dynamic group has only those devices or users added to the group where it is intended that these should be part of the group based on the rule. Always validate your group membership before assigning any policy, any application, any profile. It is one of the best practices that whenever you create a dynamic group, always validate the group membership. If you intend to have 1000 devices added to a dynamic device group, identify few devices which will definitely fulfill your dynamic rule, and then randomly check for those devices whether they have been added to the group or not. Before assigning any important policy or any application or any profile, it is mandatory that you validate the group membership. So once all of this is done, now that our users are ready, the group is ready, the next thing to do in your tenant is to customize the tenant. So tenant customization, like how it helps. So, tenant customization basically helps the users to recognize that they are interacting with an official company service. So when you do the tenant customization, it will give the end user a a comfort of validating that they are interacting with a correct service, because there can be malwares, there can be viruses, there can be other phishing emails or anything that want to give an impression that they belong to the company, and that can possess security risks. So tenant customization basically helps users to identify and to recognize that whatever interaction they are doing, whatever is happening on their devices, if they are performing enrollment or imaging or whatever, that's happening through a official company service. That's very important to understand. Depending on your environment, you may configure company branding, support information, contact details, privacy information, and appearance of the company portal. So to do the tenant customization, we need to go to the Intune Admin Center. On the Admin Center, we'll scroll right down. Under End User Experiences, click on Customization. Now, by default, there is just one customization available, which is the default customization, and it is assigned. By default, it is assigned. So, if you do not configure any sort of customization, you do not perform this step, then also the users, when they are trying to enroll, they will find a default configuration with the name of the company as MSFT. And if you are using the sandbox, they will find it as MSFT. And from there, whatever configuration and setting is configured under default, that will be visible to the user. But here I have created a different customization for you guys to see. So this is my customization. As you see, this is not yet assigned. I have not assigned it to any group right now, but this has been created. So what is there? So the first and the basic thing that you need to configure here is the name of the company and the description, like what it is. There are settings such as like what you want to show to your end users while they are trying to enroll the devices, or while they are trying to install applications or whatever. What do you want the users to see? So the first thing that they would see is the branding, which includes the organization name. There would be a color theme, and you can either show the organization logo or the organization name, or both. So I have selected as organization logo and name. There are a few support information if you would like to give it out to your end users so that they can reach out to the admins in case they are facing any issues with the enrollment. So all the contact informations are available here. Then you can also configure the various configurations, like how the device enrollments, how do you want to give the device enrollments? Do you want to make it available with prompts, without prompts, whatever? You need to provide a privacy statement URL where you are stating the privacy statements, the terms and conditions, and all of that. How do you want the privacy message to be seen on Android and iOS and iPadOS? So that's set to default. Do you want the users to select the device categories in the company portal? So that's set to allowed. And if you want to show the users the available Entra Enterprise applications, online applications, configuration manager applications, all of this is available to the users when they have the company portal open. So these are the configurations that you can set while you are performing your customization. And then, as you can see, there are no assignments, no scope tags mentioned right now. Now, why is customization or customizing a tenant important? So the clear branding, it gives the users confidence during enrollment and helps them identify the correct support team when something goes wrong. So as you saw that there is the support team details available there. So if anything goes wrong, the user knows whom to connect or how to connect to that specific admin or user. Now just imagine that there is an employee who sees a company branded portal with the correct logo and the support number. So that experience is more trustworthy than having a generic page with no organization details. The next thing is to configure the terms and conditions. So on the same page of tenant admins, you will find an option of terms and conditions. This is the third option in the end user experiences. If you click here, right now I do not have any terms and conditions. But in your case, if there is some legal disclaimer that you want to provide, or you need users to accept organization terms and conditions before enrolling or accessing managed services, these terms can be included here. So, what does the terms and conditions contain? So, the terms and conditions can explain acceptable use, it can explain privacy expectations, security responsibilities, and the organization's device management requirements. The word used in the terms and conditions should be reviewed by appropriate legal, compliance, and human resource teams because it's kind of a legal disclaimer that you are giving to the users, end users who are going to enroll their devices with your company or with your organizations. Specifically, if they are going to use their personal devices, the legal disclaimer should be present while they are going to perform that kind of enrollment. The technical administrators should configure and deploy the requirement, but they should not create organizational legal policies without the necessary business approval. That is why it is said that when you put in your terms and conditions here, you should always get the terms and conditions reviewed by appropriate legal compliance and human resource terms so that no legal policy or no compliance policy gets affected by any improper wording being used in the terms and conditions. Now, the final step before we actually start to perform the enrollment and application deployment and other activities, the major and the final area is to configure RBAC, which is the role based access control, and the scope. Before configuring the RBAC, let's first understand what is role based access control. It is kind of similar to what we discussed earlier of not giving all users or all admins the roles of administrator, not giving all the users administrative rights or administrative privileges. So RBAC determines what an administrator can see and what actions that administrator can perform. So when you are working with Intune or you are an Intune administrator, there should be three questions that should always come to your mind. The first one, what tasks can the administrator perform? What kind of activities does the administrator will do in the tenant? What are their tasks assigned to them? The second, which users or devices can the administrator manage? Is the administrator going to manage all users and all device of the tenant? Or are they going to have just read only access? Are they going to just pull out the reports of all users and all devices? Are they going to work as help desk technicians? So, which users or which devices are the administrators going to manage? And the third is which object and policies should the administrator be able to access? Like I mentioned earlier, are they going to perform device management? Are they going to be report readers? Are they going to be help desk operators? Are they going to be security operators, security readers, security admins? What would be their actual role? What would be their actual task? What kind of objects they should be able to access? What other policies they would be involved in? So all those kinds of things should come into mind while you are performing the Intune admin activities and while you are managing the Intune tenant in your organization. The roles define the allowed action. Whatever roles you assign to the users, whatever roles you assign to the admins, these define the allowed actions. The scope groups define which users and which devices can be managed. There is an option of scope group as well. We look into it in details, like how the scope groups can be created and scope tags can be created. But the scope groups basically define which users or which devices can be managed. The scope tags help control which Intune objectives are visible to particular administrator. The scope tags help to control the Intune objects. This becomes especially valuable in large organizations with different departments, countries, subsidiaries, or regional IT teams. For example, an administrator in one region can be allowed to manage only the devices and policies belonging to that region. This kind of scope groups and scope tags or region based IT teams, this happens in large organizations, the MNC countries, companies that we are talking about, the organizations which have their operational bases in Asia, they have their operational bases in Europe, Middle East, somewhere in US, UK, all of that. So they are located they in different geographic locations. Those kind of organizations take help of scope groups, they take help of scope tags, and they plan to restrict the admins so that the admins can work only in one region. There are multiple reasons for that. There is reason for security with when it comes to administrator restriction. There is reason for security. There is also a reason to restrict the admins, such as to reduce the admin overload or the overhead. Because if, let's suppose, the organization in totality has, let's say, 10,000 users, the users are divided across different geographic locations. If the admins are not restricted in a specific geographic location, let's say there is a team of 5 people who are working as admins in the help desk, let's suppose, and there are 10,000 users. It's difficult for those 5 people to manage the 10,000 users. It becomes very difficult. So there can be scenarios where the admins are restricted to a specific region, and it is for safety purposes of the organization as well as to reduce the admin overload. So when we are talking about Intune, the Intune scopes, the Intune role-based access, all of this is very important to keep in mind when we are performing the configuration of profiles, policies, application deployment, and other stuff. With this, we come to the end of the basic configuration that needs to be done on the tenant before we actually start enrolling the devices. Before ending this video, I will also provide you with a checklist which you can check before you enroll any production device into your Intune tenant. Here is the Intune tenant readiness checklist, which you must confirm before you enroll production devices. The first step is to verify the MDM authority. It should be set to Microsoft Intune. The users should have required Intune licenses, either in the form of E5 license, which is an integrated license, or Intune individual licenses, which is the Intune Plan 1, Plan 2, or Intune Suite licenses. If available and if required, the custom domain should be added to the tenant and it should be verified. The user accounts should be created if these are cloud users. If they are on-premise user or hybrid user, the user accounts should be correctly synchronized. The administrative roles should follow the least privilege principles, like we talked about previously. The admin roles, like not all admins should have the global administrator rights. The admin roles should follow least privilege principles. Security groups have been planned and tested. The security groups should be ready, either the static security group or the dynamic group membership is there, but it should be planned, it should be properly tested. The group membership should be validated. What group members are there in each individual group, that should be validated. The company branding and the support details should be configured. Terms and conditions should have proper approval before they are uploaded. The approval from the legal team, the compliance team, that should be there. The wordings should be validated before the terms and conditions are approved and they are uploaded into Intune. RBAC roles, scope groups, scope tags should be properly designed. The small pilot groups should be tested after all the configuration has been done. Any policy that is to be assigned, any application, any profile that is to be assigned should be tested before the broad deployments, and the device enrollment should also be tested on small pilot groups. Either it is personally enrolled or it is corporate enrolled, but a pilot group testing should be performed previously before the entire enrollment of the bulk devices is made. If all these items are complete, your Intune tenant is in a much stronger position for a successful production rollout. Before we finish, there are generally four common mistakes that beginners do or that IT admins who are just starting to work with Intune do. The first, do not begin enrolling every device before testing with a pilot group. Whether it's a personally owned device or it's a corporate owned device or it's a shared device, before enrolling any device, if it is the first time that on the tenant you are going to configure Intune, if it is the first time that you are going to do not begin the enrollment of every device before you test it with a pilot group. The testing should be done with a pilot group. Once the testing is successful and you're satisfied with the outcome and the expectation is met, only then you start enrolling all the other organization device into the Intune. The second, do not assign every administrator with global admin role. As we already discussed, global admin role is the highest privilege role. So you should not assign every administrator with global admin role. It might look like it makes the work easier and it makes everything simpler because the global admin will have access to everything. But from security perspective, it is not suggested, and Microsoft recommends to follow the least privilege path. The third mistake, do not deploy policies to larger dynamic groups without verifying the membership. Whenever you are going to create dynamic groups, since dynamic group is rule based membership, so it can be a possibility that devices or users who are not supposed to be part of that group are getting included in the group because of the rule that's used to create the group membership. So before any assignment, before any large scale deployment, make sure to verify the membership, specifically when dynamic groups are being used for any sort of deployments. And fourth, never assume that a user is ready for enrollment simply because their account exists. Just because you see that a user account is created or an user account is synchronized, it does not mean that the user is ready for enrollment. You must always verify the licensing, you should verify the group membership, you should verify the enrollment eligibility, you should also verify the device eligibility, whether the device is ready to be enrolled or not. And then you should start planning the enrollment of the devices for that specific user. Just because the user exists, it doesn't mean that the user is ready to get their devices enrolled into Intune. If you can avoid making these mistakes, it will save you hours or in some cases even days for troubleshooting. So now you know the main configurations that is required to prepare a new Microsoft Intune tenant. In today's video, I tried to keep it very to the point and very short. So we covered MDM authority, domains, users, roles, licenses, groups, tenant customizations, terms and conditions, and the role-based access control. If this video helped you understand the Intune tenant configuration, give it a like. It helps more Intune learners discover the channel. If you are new to this channel, subscribe. If you are not new and you are watching my videos and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and turn on the notifications so you do not miss the next video in this Microsoft Intune series. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.